These time factors that, they could really give good guesstimations of when things like this are going to be released. They don't want to rush anything. They don't want any more bugs found, like the bug last month. Of course, that was a very specific bug that nobody knew was there. They had it fixed before anybody knew it was there. And you had to be a miner with substantial amount of hash power to even implement that bug. And if you had that, millions of dollars worth of infrastructure to mine Bitcoin, would you really want to try to expose a flaw in Bitcoin that would, could possibly, bring the price down when you've bought all this equipment to mine it and store your value? If you were a miner and found this bug, you'd probably just contact the core developers and let them know about it, right? So the guy who found this was a Bitcoin Unlimited developer, and he did the right thing. He contacted core and notified them, and they fixed it and then released all the information.
Wow.
Okay, so after Dandelion, there will be, or probably there will be, because you never know about these release dates, an update called Bulletproofs, and this is going to give Bitcoin its privacy, and it probably won't be on the base layer. Bulletproofs will probably be a second layer or sidechain solution, like Lightning or Liquid. And so you kind of use it when you want to, and when you don't use it, you just do on-chain transactions. And so I think it's better having it that way as a choice. And this way, you don't have the problems that Monero has when trying to verify how many coins are really in the network. You can't really verify that if everything on your blockchain is private. Mm-hmm. You can't verify that the proper amount of coins are out there and that nobody found some bug to duplicate the coins, right? And is exploiting that. There's no way of knowing if the whole chain is private. If you have your base layer open and privacy on second layers and side chains, then everything could be verified. There is a feature when you run a node that gives you all the Bitcoin. It totals up all the Bitcoin and all the inputs and all the UTXO sets that are holding Bitcoin right now. So you couldn't do that. You can't do that on Monero.
No, in fact, you can't do that with Swift. I mean, I hate to bring back fiat in this conversation, but the more you say this stuff, the more I see the flaws with the current system that we have now with US dollars on the SWIFT system. Mm-hmm. There's no way for an individual like yourself or me to even determine how many digital dollars have been created. Mm-hmm. There's no way for us to know. But at any rate, that's a side issue. But like I said, it just seems to me that Bitcoin is an honest currency in dishonest times. Mm-hmm. And I like what I'm hearing. And this is very exciting stuff to me. I mean, the future proofing of Bitcoin is the information you're giving me now is not stuff that I heard about 2 or 3 years ago. So it looks like they're moving forward, and they're actually shoring it up. They're getting it ready to actually be used as an honest to God currency, and that's exciting.
Yes, they're making the base layer, that sturdy, hardy foundation it needs to be. You don't want to build these awesome walls and ceilings and roof of a house on quicksand, right? It's got to have a good foundation. Bitcoin is that foundation to build all these other things on top of. Monero, I see a lot like Litecoin, like how Litecoin basically gets destroyed by the Lightning Network. Monero could quite possibly be destroyed with bulletproofs, because it's going to bring that long-awaited privacy to Bitcoin. In fact, Fluffy Pony, the main guy behind Monero, he's seriously taking a good look at bulletproofs right now, thinking about switching Monero over from ring signatures, which has many issues with it, and going to switch Monero over to bulletproofs, which I find is great. Let let him get it first, put it out there in a much cheaper chain. And if there is an issue with it, I mean, this is testing on a live network with real value. That's awesome. And if there is something to go wrong with it, let it go wrong there before it gets to Bitcoin, right? Because you can only do so much testing. You can only do so much testing on a test net, because on a test net, there's no real value at stake. So if it was on a test net and I was a black hat hacker and I found an exploit, am I going to use that exploit against the network when it's on a test net with no value? No. But now it goes to a network with value. Now I have to use it instantly and try to steal value from that network, because what if somebody else also found this exploit? I'm not going to want to wait for that new feature to make it to Bitcoin and use it and exploit it there, because if another black hat hacker found the same exploit I found, he could exploit it and it would be fixed then. After he gets his payday, it'll be fixed in Monero first and then go to Bitcoin, fixed. So
Yep.
you got to exploit it as soon. Yeah, you got to exploit it as soon as it goes to a network with value. So I think all these altcoins are test beds for Bitcoin, and anybody who buys an altcoin is investing in Bitcoin research. And I thank you.
That's a great way of putting it. I'll tell you what, you made me think of basically some news stories that I've seen through the years. And by the way, I have Bitcoin. I'm at full disclosure. And it's a big investment of mine. But at any rate, I've seen stories, particularly in the last 2 years, that talk about the Bitcoin or blockchain in general being hacked. But that's not what happened. And I'd like your take on that. Why the media is actually saying that, for instance, the Bitcoin blockchain was hacked, or this cryptocurrency's blockchain was hacked, when it wasn't hacked. There's never been an actual case of a blockchain actually being hacked into. So your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, the news media, what can I say? They haven't been doing their job since I was, knee-high to a grasshopper.
Yeah, but what they're describing is literally someone whose computer got hacked. They didn't password protect their wallet. And so someone hacked in their PC, got into their wallet, took their cryptocurrency, took their Bitcoin, and then that was it. And then all of a sudden the news media actually says, oh, the blockchain's been hacked because someone lost their cryptocurrency.
Yeah,
but at any rate, that has never happened, though. Would you agree with this? I mean, a blockchain itself has never actually been hacked.
Right. And I was just leading up to that. But since I was very young, I can remember when I was young, the news actually gave you the news instead of their opinion. They researched and gave you the facts as best as they could describe, but most of the time they were real facts, right? Now they don't. Now it's such a rush to get information out that they don't do their due diligence and really get to the nitty-gritty of things. They just scrape the surface and come out with the exclusive. That's the main goal in news these days, where it used to be come out with the correct information. Now it's come out with the information, no matter how poor the quality is, come out fast, come out first.
Yeah.
So yes, you're correct. There have been no blockchains that I know of that have ever been hacked. Certainly not Bitcoin.
Yep.
But exchanges get hacked. Exchanges get hacked, and private people get hacked and extorted. But extortion is not wild in Bitcoin. Buying drugs is not wild in Bitcoin. Buying illegal arms is not rampant in Bitcoin. I think it was MIT or some college did a study, and they found out it was like less than 1% of Bitcoin transactions had anything to do with being nefarious. But if you don't want to deal with a coin that is used on the black market, you don't want to use USD, right? There's no currency used more for illegal things than USD.
Yeah, that's correct. The US dollar. Hey, if you don't mind, I'd like to bring in my co-host, Del, who's got a question or two from our live audience, if you don't mind. Hey, Del, welcome to the show, and what you got for us?
Thank you, TC. I've got a question here from Chaos Craig. He's worried about the IRS and who isn't. And basically he's asking, is there any updates, or is Bitcoin currently good enough to pass the IRS spy tech? and he claims here that there's a number of firms that are working on AI to track the transactions, and the IRS has apparently financed some work in this area. Is there anything on the horizon that will stop the IRS getting into our accounts to check them out?
Well, regulation and laws this are kind of like in a very gray area right now. Lots of people don't know how to classify this new Bitcoin thing. There are some states in the US that classify it as a commodity. Other states classify it as a currency. I believe the federal government is leaning towards commodity. But all the taxation laws and everything are very vague at the moment. Now, Coinbase was queried by the IRS to hand over all of its records of all of its users so they could take a look at who's been buying what and selling what. And Coinbase said, no, that's just too widespread of a request. You got to narrow it down a bit. Of course, they don't. They're the IRS. They can do what they want. But the reason why they did this was because there were some bad guys that were laundering money through Coinbase, millions of dollars. And this got the attention of the IRS, so they wanted to know what else was going on over there at Coinbase. Well, it went to court, and quite a few months, I think it was close to a year later, they finally settled that Coinbase would release their records of their clients who did transactions of, I think it was $10,000 or more, or $5,000 or more. I think it was $5,000 or more. If you had done this, you were supposed to, if you did transactions of $5,000 or more at the time of the transaction, you would have received a letter from Coinbase informing you that your information was sent to the IRS. Now, what the IRS saw as what they were, I think what they were going for were capital gains. Or they were looking for maybe for more money laundering, but that's not really the job of the IRS. That would be the FBI or the CIA or some other agency. But I think they were looking for capital gains. And the way that I understand it, now I'm not a financial advisor or professional tax accountant or anything like that, so take what I say as a grain of salt. This is what I'm saying here is the best of my understanding after reading multiple articles on the subject, and we all know how news agencies get things wrong. So this is all I know from reading these articles. But what counted as capital gains was when you bought Bitcoin on there at, let's say, $5,000, and you let it sit on there for several months and then pulled it off, let's say 3 months later, and it was now $6,000, and you bought one Bitcoin, right, for $5,000, pulled it off the exchange onto your own private wallet, or used it to buy something, or whatever you did with it, give it to a friend or whatever, at $6,000, they counted that as $1,000 capital gain. So that would be added to your yearly income, and you would have to pay taxes as though you earned that $1,000. But they didn't care where it went. It didn't matter where it went. It's just from when you bought it to when you pulled it off, were there any gains or losses? So of course, if you bought at 20,000, right, and you pulled it off at 15,000, you actually had capital losses. This could be then deducted from your yearly income and give you a tax break, right? So if you bought Bitcoin at 5,000 and pulled it off immediately onto your own personal software or hardware wallet, I mean, there'd be very little time for the price to move. Therefore, there would be no capital gains or capital losses to record. Even if you put it to your own wallet that you owned, it just wasn't how they measured it, because they really don't know or really can't prove what you did with it, and it's even hard for you to prove it. So the only thing that they could do is go from purchase to removal from the site. And so if this is the way it is, and that's the way my understanding is, if you were to purchase and immediately pulled off, or if the price was going down, you could wait a while and even record some losses. Might even help you out at the end of the year. This could be advised, but one more time, talk to your tax guy about it. Don't go by anything I say. Does that kind of explain where he's going?
Yeah, well, it explains a lot. I should point out that Craig has been good enough to drop in 3 articles here about the IRS tracking Bitcoins and the like. Probably worth checking out if it's something you're interested in.
Well, there are different services that's called chain analysis, where they can track your coins and what other coins they're mixed with. You know, so if you bought coins from Coinbase and put it into a wallet address, and then you bought some on the street and put it into the same address, now Coinbase knows that you bought more from or obtained more somehow, and because you put it into the same address that was linked to you from Coinbase, because Coinbase KYCs you. But if you never buy from a place that KYCs you, if you buy everything from some guy at a coffee shop, there's nothing connecting you, or at least there's very little. There's some IP addresses, maybe if you didn't use an IPN, a VPN, or or the Onion network or anything like that. There might be some vague IP addresses that might point to you that not the average person doesn't have access to. I mean, we're talking about 3-letter agencies again that could kind of track down maybe who you are, but possibly not. So it all depends on how careful you are on obtaining your Bitcoins. How privately you obtain them makes it more private what you do with them. But I advise everyone to stay above the board, above the law, and follow the law and pay your taxes. Your country needs your support. It's wasteful and discussing things they sometimes might do.
Thank you for that. Craig has actually clarified his thoughts here, and he was thinking more about a privacy upgrade to Bitcoin itself.
Well, like I mentioned
actually,
before,
you cover that in the future. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, like actually, Lightning Network gives you some privacy. The Schnorr signatures update to SegWit will add more privacy. The MAST update will add more privacy, make it harder for these chain analysis companies to follow the coin trail. And of course, and I talked about how the Dandelion update will help mask your location. And bulletproofs will be the big one. Bulletproofs will give you Monero type privacy without the rig signature issues that Monero has.
Craig's very happy about that. I assure you of that. I have one other question here from Meej, and it's more of a crystal ball type question. So I appreciate it if you're able to give us specific dates on this. But what's your opinion about when Bitcoin will become a payment for the likes of Amazon and other companies?
Yeah, that would require a crystal ball. Well, you know, it's already used at overstock.com. It's been used there for years. They had announced towards the beginning that whenever they received a Bitcoin payment, they were hodling 25% and converting 75% into cash to help pay bills and, you know, their bills and, you know, their utilities and whatever, you know, requirements they needed to run their company. It was a few years later they announced that they started hodling 50% and only were transforming the other 50% into fiat. So actually, like an Amazon that took Bitcoin as payment for goods and immediately turned it into fiat, I believe I don't know exactly when this thing is going to happen, but it could be bad or good for Bitcoin. If they did it and immediately turned it into cash, to the full sum into cash to pay their bills and their suppliers, that could help maybe stabilize the price or even make it go down at first, because the people that have been hodling their Bitcoin are now going to bring it out of the hodl to then spend. Now this is new, fresh Bitcoin on the market, bigger supply, lower price, right? Supply and demand laws come into effect here. Now, if they hodled 25%, 50%, or better yet, if they queried their employees and said, how much of your paycheck would you like in Bitcoin? 10%, 25%, 50%, 80%, and then it goes to their payroll division and started using that Bitcoin to pay up to the requested amount that the employee wanted. I would love that idea, because now the Bitcoin is being used to purchase these goods and then immediately going to the employees of that company that actually want it. And probably, I would imagine, a good percentage of those people would hodl it, because currency goes through these stages. It becomes a collectible, and then a store of value, and then a transfer of value, and then a unit of account. Things start getting priced in it. So Bitcoin is kind of in between this collectible and store of value stage, and it is kind of making a little bit into transfer of value. I mean, you can buy some things, but it's such a small scale at the moment. It's growing every day, right? There's more and more places accepting Bitcoin every single day, but the world's a big place. We need a lot more before it ever starts to become considered, a contender for some kind of worldwide, borderless, mass adopted currency, one world currency.
Yeah, that would be awesome if employers gave their employees the option of taking some Bitcoin in payments. I do have one more question come through here. It's another little bit of a crystal ball question here. It's from Gray SV1, and he asks, when do you predict the remainder of the Bitcoin will be mined, and what will happen after that?
Ooh, you don't need a crystal ball for that. These are known things, at least maybe not exactly known, but pretty good idea. It's kind of like the next halving, if people are familiar with that. People talk about a halving happening every 4 years, which is completely incorrect. The halvings happen every 210,000 blocks, which should take about 4 years if the blocks take 10 minutes per block. Now, as more hash power gets added to the network, and the block time targeting is only readjusted every 2 weeks. So during that 2 weeks when it's not adjusted, there could be lots of hash power added, which brings the average block time down a little bit. It might go to 9.5 minutes, or even 9, or even 8.5 minutes if a lot of hash power's added, which will bring that halving a little bit closer. Not a lot, just a little bit. So like 2 years ago, the next halving was predicted to be in July. Right now, the next halving, July of 2020. Right now, the next halving is the end of May 2020, because of this extra hash power that's brought into Bitcoin, shaving off a little bit off that average of 10 minutes per block. So you have the same effect far into the future for the last Bitcoin mined. So it used to be the year 2141. Now they've changed it to 2140 is the best guesstimation at this time for when the last Bitcoin is mined. But what is Bitcoin's goal? Bitcoin's goal is to be the world's first mass adopted currency. We're talking about needing to handle millions or hundreds of millions of transactions per second. Now, how do the miners get paid right now today? They get paid in 2 ways. They get the block reward, which right now is 12.5 Bitcoins, and they get the transaction fee for every transaction they can shove into that block. So as the block fee as the block reward goes down and down and down over time, at that halving, right? When Bitcoin first started, it was 50 Bitcoins per block. Then 210,000 block later, the block reward went from 50 to 25, and then 210,000 blocks later, it went from 25 to 12.5, where it is now today. And we got about just under 2 more years for it to change again to that would be what, 16 or 6.25. And so as that block reward keeps getting lower and lower, you need the transaction fee per block to get higher and higher. So we need to put more and more transactions in a block, which they're trying to do, right? SegWit is doing that. SegWit brought the block size up from 1 meg, and they're making the transactions smaller, which means you can fit more in, and the block size is actually growing for, up to 2 megs now. If everybody was using SegWit, please use SegWit. And when Schnorr signatures come out, it'll be 4 megs. And we probably will get another block size increase in the future. Now, as you increase the base block size, SegWit basically doubles it, right? So right now it's doubling it. After Schnorr signatures, it will quadruple it, because the base block size will still be 1 meg, but with Schnorr signatures, it's 4. So if we increase the block size to 2 megs with SegWit and Schnorr signatures, we now have an 8 meg block. The equivalent of putting all these transactions in would be like a regular 8 meg block. So use SegWit. They're working on it. And one other thing about SegWit is 2 years ago, like I think I mentioned earlier, it was impossible to increase the block size without a hard fork. And SegWit came along, which was a soft fork to increase the block size. So that's just all recent history, right? We're talking about 1, 2, 3 years ago. How do we know what updates are going to come out between now and the year 2140 that are going to help shove more transactions in a block? So I predict that by the year 2140 and the last Bitcoin is mined, that these blocks are going to store millions or hundreds of millions of transactions per block, and you're going to have just a tiny fee connected to each one of these transactions, but because there's millions of them, it's going to be plenty of money to support the miners.
Thank you.
In regards to, and Del, thank you very much. I appreciate you bringing in questions. I have a question based on what you just said. What do you say to those people in the media or people who are naysayers of Bitcoin saying it's going to take the entire world's electricity supply to finish mining up Bitcoin?
No.
I know I already know the answer to this, but I just want you to say it on the channel here.
Yeah. I would say that's ridiculous. Yes, because everything in Bitcoin is all self-regulating. It's kind of self-adjusting. If it got too expensive, if you had to use all the Earth's power to mine Bitcoin, guess what? You couldn't mine Bitcoin.
That's correct.
Now,
but that's the thing, though. They're not taking into account all the, we just talked a little bit about future proofing and, all the wonderful, benefits that are being added over time. It won't be that way in the end. Now, if you go by the standard that Bitcoin mining has gone under 3 years ago, and if it never improved, there was no improvement whatsoever to the blockchain whatsoever, then theoretically, maybe that would be possible. But I just don't see it.
Yeah, and you can't ever think that, no changes are going to come about. And, Bitcoin is a very dynamic system. It's changing all the time. It's evolving. And just like the example of SegWit, making that impossible possible, I'm sure there's going to be other moments like this in the future. They're going to make other things that we think are impossible today will be possible in the future. And to even try to guess what these things are going to be is ridiculous to even attempt. But they talk about this Bitcoin mining electricity thing because it has gone up so much over the years. But when you look at it compare it to other industries, it's very little power, right? Yeah. It's a lot less power than the energy used to mine gold out of the ground, right? It's a lot less power that is used to run all the bank branches across the United States, let alone the world, right? Branches would probably shut down, not all of them, right? I see Bitcoin doing to banks the same thing that email did to the post office, right? They had to kind of restructure, rethink the way of doing things. And what did the post office do? They focus less on letters and more on parcels, packages, and they're competing now more with UPS and Federal Express than just carrying letters. So they had to restructure. This is what the banks will have to do. They'll restructure, but we'll probably need a lot less branches. Just think about all the computers at all the branches, all the lights, all the air conditioning that those buildings need, all the people going back and forth to those branches. That's a lot of energy. Okay, that's way far and beyond the energy that Bitcoin's using right now. And mining's always getting the hardware might get more expensive, but they're more efficient. So they actually do more hashes per second with less watts. So there's always that feature or function of the equation also.
Okay, gotcha. I'm sorry for butting in like that, Del, but that was a perfect time to ask that question. What else you got for us?
Four Satoshis doing a great job of answering all the questions there. Many thanks for those top-notch answers. Can I just remind the people that's listening live, if they drop in questions, I'll pick them up for sure and bring them in at suitable times. But I'm out of questions for the time being, TC, so back over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Del. Okay, we pretty much covered the future of Bitcoin, the developmental steps basically for future proofing. And this is, once again, this is the information we have today. If we brought you back in 6 months, which actually I hope you will come back and visit us, we'll have even more probably information on what they're doing with Bitcoin. So, but that goes into my next question, which is if you could explain the concept of double spending and how the Bitcoin blockchain prevents double spending.
Oh, there's so much misinformation about double spending and misunderstanding about it. A double spend can only be attempted. It's not a guaranteed successful thing once you attempt it. And to attempt a double spend, you can't use any of the traditional wallets, like the hardware wallets, the Trezor, the Ledger, or the commonly used software wallets like Electrum, or the cell phone wallets like Mycelium. These wallets don't allow you to even attempt a double spend. So, and the vast majority of people are using these wallets. So what do you need to do to even attempt a double spend? You need to download a malicious wallet. And
well,
now,
hang on, the concept of double spending, let's touch on that first, if you don't mind. But let's say that you're the coffee shop guy, and I come in there and I get a cup of coffee from you, and I literally give you Bitcoin for the coffee. Mm-hmm. And then you give me the coffee, and then I get back on my phone and I somehow cancel that transaction while I'm walking out with the coffee. Is that pretty much the concept of a double spend?
No, you don't cancel the transaction. You spend that same Bitcoin again back to yourself with a higher fee.
Okay, gotcha.
So, because the miners are in it to make money, they get the transaction, they get the block reward, and plus all the fees associated with each transaction they fit in the block. So, if there's 2 transactions in the mempool, that's the place where transactions go to wait to get into the next block. Now, if there's 2 transactions in there with the same inputs, and one has a 2,000 Satoshi fee attached to it, and the other one has a 100 Satoshi fee attached to it, which one are the miners going to take first?
They're going to take the 100 Satoshi, So they'll take the higher Satoshi.
Yeah, I think I said 2,100.
Okay, gotcha, 2,000. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, so they're going to take the 2,000 over the 100 because that's more Satoshis for them, right? Everybody loves Satoshi, right? Says the Four Satoshis. So, everybody loves the Four Satoshis except for altcoiners.
Well, you have nothing to worry about that.
Okay.
But thank you for that, by the way, because you cleared up a misconception I had about double spending.
Yes, and like I said, the average wallet can't do it. So you got to get a malicious wallet, or unless you have the skills to write your own wallet, right? That's not easy to do. So you have to get a malicious wallet. And where do you get that? From some malicious guy who's writing malicious software. Now you got to trust that this malicious guy who writes malicious software doesn't hide a virus in that wallet that when you download and install it, tries to look for other wallets on your computer or your cell phone and tries to steal the Bitcoin out of those, right? So it's a very risky thing to try to even attempt a double spend, let alone whether it's successful or not. But if I was a coffee shop owner, I would definitely accept Bitcoin and give out the coffee with 0 confirmations, because it's ridiculous to not accept Bitcoin because of the double spend threat, right? That would be like saying you can't have a coffee shop and accept USD because there's a threat that one of the bills might be counterfeit. Mm-hmm. That's ridiculous. And it happens every day. I've been running a business for over 26 years, and I go to the merchant teller window at the bank, kind of that little box that you're kind of separated from everybody else. So you have these private conversations with the tellers back in there. And so we talk about things back in there, and they show me things back in there, and they show me all the counterfeit bills they accepted that week. And it's usually more than one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just one branch out of
Yep.
how many millions of branches across the country, right? So this happens all the time. And so basically what these people are saying, you cannot open a shop and accept USD because you might get a counterfeit bill. And also, when you have a retail shop, there's a lot of, there's what you got to consider is called shrinkage, not the kind with John Costanza on the Jerry Seinfeld show. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about there. There's another shrinkage. Okay, maybe some people out there might understand. But there's another thing in the retail industry that's called shrinkage. It's when your inventory shrinks. It's when somebody shoplifts. Okay, so to worry about shoplifting and say because shoplifting does go on out there, you shouldn't open a shop. Well, if all the shop owners went by this, there would be no shops. It's ridiculous.
And that makes perfect sense to me. Go ahead.
Yes. Okay, so the vast majority of people just want to go in a coffee shop, get their coffee, pay for it, and be on their way. They don't want to do a double spend. They don't want to attempt one. And of course, every attempt is not successful. And it's very risky by dealing with this black market sketchy software created by black hat hackers. So it just wouldn't be very prevalent. And another thing about, you don't benefit very much from a double spend. With a cup of coffee, right? Now, if you're buying something of substantial, of course, the retailer is going to wait for a confirmation. If you're buying thousands of dollars worth of product or whatever. But for small purchases, it's okay to accept a zero comp, right? Because it's just not gonna, it's just nothing to worry about. But there was a interview I just saw last week. I think actually it was 2 weeks ago. I think it was October 1st. That Naomi Brockwell interviewed two guys in New Zealand. You could look up Naomi Brockwell on YouTube and look at her videos. Go back to about August 1st, and you'll see her sitting between two guys in actually two different videos. But the one that I'm talking about is 34 minutes and 56 seconds. And if you go 8 minutes and 10 seconds into that video, you will hear her ask the question about this guy who had a restaurant and started meeting up with these Bitcoiner meetups, and he wanted to start accepting Bitcoin at his restaurant. And a lot of people at the meetup said, "Oh no, you can't do that. You can't make them pay for the bill and then wait 10 to 15 minutes for a confirmation to come in. It'll never work. And if you accept zero comp transactions, they're going to rip you off blind, and you're going to lose all your money, and you have to shut down. It's going to be awful." Well, he said to heck with all that and started accepting Bitcoin with zero comps, paying their bills for a couple of beers or a couple of lunches or a couple of dinners. He's accepted Bitcoin. And guess what? He's never had an issue with the double spend. Everybody just wants to go to the restaurant, buy their food and pay for it, or have their food and pay for it. Most people are just good, honest people and just want good service and pay their bill. That's all they want.
Yep, I agree. And once again, thank you for clearing up my misconception. That's the way I've been thinking about double spending for the last couple of years, was basically someone making a payment and then somehow canceling the transaction after they've received the service or the goods.
Yeah,
And,
there's no canceling a transaction. Once it's in the mempool, it's there for 2 weeks. If it does not get picked up by a miner in 2 weeks, it gets shoved out of the mempool, and that's kind of like canceling it. So you could do a zero fee transaction, and if the miners don't pick up that transaction, it will never get mined, and after 2 weeks it will get kicked out, and it will just never happen. Now, there are wallets that protect you against such a thing. If the shop owner has the Electrum wallet, it's a very nice wallet for the Android, and when you see a payment come in, you see it show up instantly with zero confirmations, and that's beautiful. You give the person their receipt and they're on their merry way. Now, if you see that transaction come in with zero confirmations and there's this little yellow triangle there, you click on that, it says warning, low fee transaction. So to attempt this double spend, like I said a little earlier, you have to send the money to the merchant with a very low fee and then send it back, that same funds back to yourself with a high fee. So now this merchant sees this little warning that it's a low transaction, could be that the customer is trying to attempt a double spend, and he could, there could be a little message by a little plaque by the register, when paying in Bitcoin, if you send a low fee, then we'll have to wait for one confirmation, right? Just like there's plaques there that say if you use a credit card, it has to be a $25 minimum, or if you pay with a check and the check's bounced, there's a $45 service fee. So all these things are things that business owners have dealt with for years. There's no reason to close your business and not accept checks and not accept credit cards and not accept USD because of all these negative features. You, as a businessman, deal with it.
Right. Just like anything else. I mean, it's always been that way with credit cards, with cash, with checks.
Yes,
there's always been, some risk associated with making any of these things.
Yep, with cash it could be counterfeit, with a check it could bounce, and with credit cards you got like up to 6 to 9 months. There could be,
Cancel your transaction.
reverse the charges, chargeback. And so talk about 10-minute wait time is too long.
Yeah.
How about credit cards? It's 6 to 9 months before you're really sure that you really have that money.
Right.
So that's a long time. Now Bitcoin, 10 minutes, you get a confirmation, it's yours. There's nothing going to reverse that transaction. And again, in Litecoin, this also helps fix or mediate the double spend attack. If they use Litecoin, you see the transaction instantly, and it's irreversible instantly in Lightning. Did I say Litecoin? I meant Lightning.
Yep. No, you said Lightning.
Okay.
Okay, gotcha. Well, thank you once again. That's pretty good information there. I know that there's issues that come across with hard forks from time to time. Not necessarily with Bitcoin, but with other cryptocurrencies where there's double spending issues.
Now there's a double spend attack on different altcoins out there because they don't have enough hash power securing the network. And this is that network effect I was talking about earlier. You need a lot of devs, a lot of nodes, and a lot of hash power. So this can't happen. And I've been telling people for 2 years that these altcoins are not secure. They don't have enough hash rate securing them, and they're going to get hacked or double spend. And what happens is there's miners that can acquire enough hash rate to attack the network, and they could basically steal the block reward for the past so many blocks and respend those back to themselves, resend them back to themselves, like bringing those block reward to them by what's called a 51% attack. Now you have to have more than 51% of the network hash rate to do this. But as I've been talking about this with people, telling people that these altcoins are not secure for 2 years, what I hear back is, oh, Four Satoshis, you're worried about nothing. There's never been a double spend attack on any coin. It's all a bunch of nothing to worry about, and there's no financial motive there. It's just you're just barking up the wrong tree. I'm like, no, you wait, it's going to happen. Well, finally this year I've been vindicated. It's happened 5 times. It's happened 3 times the Verge, once to Bitcoin Gold, and once to some Zcash, Zen coin, one of those Z coins. I don't even know. I don't even care. Right. So,
Gotcha.
So it's happened now, and I get to say, haha, told you so. I mean, a blind man could see this stuff coming. There's not, the hash rate's not there. It's not secure. Hello, McFly.
Yep. Okay, well, now that we've covered double spending, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to get into an interesting area here, which is if you are not using Bitcoin as a currency, but you do consider it a store of value, and many people do, by the way, so it's a valid question. If you buy Bitcoin and you put it in your investment portfolio for instance, for retirement, how can you hedge Bitcoin, basically for your investments? What would you do?
I don't know of a good way to hedge Bitcoin. Each person who has some kind of long-term savings or retirement account would have to make that decision for themselves on what they want to have, investments in me, myself. I have several different stocks I own, from online brokerage companies, a few diversified funds, and a savings account, and then a nice little sum of Bitcoin. So I
Would you
don't put all
consider
my eggs.
would you consider buying another cryptocurrency a good hedge for Bitcoin?
Right. Well, as I was saying, I don't put all my eggs in one basket, so I do
Yep.
diversify a bit, and that's where I think a lot of people don't understand the meaning of diversification. It's not just to buy something else in the same, industry or asset class. You have to get into a different asset class, because the whole reason that you want a diversified portfolio is that if one asset class, tanks, your portfolio doesn't tank. That one thing in your portfolio tanks, but the rest of the stuff could be going up, or at least holding steady, to make your portfolio maybe go a little bit up, or at least hold steady, right? So to diversify into the same asset class just doesn't make any sense at all. You don't understand the function or meaning of diversification. I think this started with, the young people in Bitcoin who aren't 18 years or older, that can't have investment accounts, right? Because you got to be at least 18 to open up, let's say, at E-Trade, online brokerage. So if you're 12 years old in your parents' basement and you got Bitcoin and you want to diversify, there's no choice other than other altcoins. But what you don't want to do is, let's say you don't have any real savings or investments, and you get a little lump sum of money, and you want to buy Intel, as an investment. So you buy some few Intel. Now you save up some money, you want to make another purchase of a different stock, and you want to diversify. You don't buy AMD, right? That's the same industry. Those can go up and down independently, but they're likely over the long term to go up and down together, as just the demand for chips in general goes up and down. Those stocks go up and down together. So that's not diversifying your portfolio. At least go into software in computers. That's still the computer industry, but at least it's software, not chip manufacturing. Or you could go into retail, right? You could get like Target or Walmart or Amazon stock, or you could go into multimedia. You could go into, Facebook or Twitter, buy stock in those. That's diversifying. But what you really want to do,
go
right?
ahead.
So getting Bitcoin and then getting the altcoins as diversifying, that's like buying Intel, and then start doing some searches on the internet for finding in the world the worst, most awful projection for the future chip manufacturer in the world, right? Some chip manufacturer in some obscure country that's about to go belly up. Buy stock in that company, right?
Right.
Because that company could rebound, because they're about to go belly up, so their stock's going to be really cheap, right? But it could rebound and overtake Intel, right? And there's your millionaire overnight. Probably not going to happen. You might see it as a good bet. You might see it as a Hail Mary long shot, and you might want to do it. But that is diversifying into crypto. So to diversify, you want to get, Intel, Microsoft, Facebook, Amazon, and then Bitcoin. You don't want to go Bitcoin, Litecoin, Monero, so forth. That's not diversifying. That same industry.
Right. And in fact, by the way, thank you for mentioning you're not a financial, guru here. We aren't either. I mean, everyone needs to make their own decisions and their own choices. But there are many asset classes. In fact, Truth, Money, and Freedom, it was originally just a gold and silver stacking group. And so a lot of us have gold and silver in our portfolios and have added cryptocurrencies in the last 2 or 3 years. And so basically Bitcoin is a very, very important part of that. And so, and I know it was kind of a strange question, but I think it was an important area to cover. Basically because there are many people who think that that's how you hedge Bitcoin, is you get Monero or you get Litecoin. So thank you for that again. And now here, I'd like to get into something that is going to be maybe a little more fun than hedging investments and, financial stuff. Let's talk about some of the use cases for Bitcoin, if you don't mind, because there are so many of them. And we can get into the particulars and technicals about using a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin versus using a credit card. We could get into all that and get very technical about it. But I say, Let's talk about Bitcoin ATMs. Let's talk about the coffee shops that take Bitcoin. Let's talk about the fun stuff, where Bitcoin is actually being used as a currency right now, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, I mean, in general, the use cases for Bitcoin are the same use cases for any currency. It's just that Bitcoin is designed from the ground up to be the best, most sound currency ever created by man, and through the creation process, tries to mimic like mining gold. So it really has this whole system that's all tied together with all these balances and checks to just work perfectly. I haven't come across anything that comes anywhere near it. But like we said before, the different stages of money being the collectible, then the store of value, and the medium of exchange, and then unit of account. I mean, all currencies had to go through these stages, at least somewhat, except for the fiats, right? They're just money by decree. This president or
Correct.
that dictator just says, this is the way it is, and that's it. And takes this worthless piece of paper to actually being worth something. And so those are kind of a cheat way to become a cheating way to become unit of account. But before fiat, when people used to use feathers or shells or beads or berries or whatever they used, it always had to go through those stages. And today, I mean, there's way more things you can buy as far as medium of exchange. There's way more things you could buy with Bitcoin as opposed to any other altcoin. I mean, I could start listing some off the top of my head, but I mean, that would be a tiny, small portion of what everything is. I mean, there's, Overstock, there's Microsoft, there's that car manufacturer, the electric ones, Tesla.
Tesla.
Yeah.
Not to mention precious metals online retailers. They're taking Bitcoin as well. I mean, it's just enormous. I mean, how many places are actually taking Bitcoin? And by the way, I do think that online retailers, the giants, like Amazon, I do think this is just a matter of time.
Sure.
They're going to be taking this too. Everyone's going to want it. Everyone's going to be using it. And it's as far as the use cases for Bitcoin, it far surpasses any other cryptocurrency currently out there for use as a currency.
Yes, because it's immutability and it's censorship resistant feature, and it's unconfiscatable, and it's borderless. Sending money across the country could cost one thing, but once it goes out of the country to another country, there's other fees involved, and there's you got to transfer the money into the the local currency of wherever it ends up, and all these fees. Bitcoin fixes all of that and makes it cheap.
Yep.
And trust me, Bitcoin on-chain transactions these days are cheap. I do them all the time. I typically send anywhere from 1 to 3 Bitcoin transactions per week for the past more than a year, right? And so for a while they were getting expensive, but like for the past 7-8 months, I don't think I paid over 12 cents. And for the past 5 or 6 months, I don't think I paid over 6 cents. And for the past few months, I'm pretty sure I paid less than 3 cents. And all of these transactions got their first confirmation within 10 minutes. Maybe there might be a couple exceptions where it might have went 12 or 13 minutes, but they're all very fast confirmations.
Yep. The Bitcoin ATMs, there's even websites you can go to find Bitcoin ATMs. They're popping up everywhere, all over the world, not just here in the US. And by the way, I'd like to reverse course here for a second here and talk for just a second. The US dollar actually used to be backed by gold, as you know. Our Constitution in the United States even says that the dollar was literally a certain amount of gold or a certain amount of silver. But we were taken off the silver standard in 1964. We were taken off the gold standard in 1971. We now have fiat. Like you said, fiat is government decree. By decree is what the word fiat means. Worthless pieces of paper that literally are imbued with power by a government. It doesn't make the dollar actually worth anything by the government saying it is worth something. Gold, backing for a dollar actually made sense. And also, it closed a lot of loopholes for manipulation. Now, I'm not saying that a dollar backed by gold is not, totally immune to any type of manipulation. I'm just saying it's harder to do it. Bitcoin is I would say it's nearly bulletproof when it comes to any type of manipulation. In fact, it's probably there now. Number one, I'm going to point out a few things. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get into a dialogue, but I'd like to point this out. There's only going to be 21 million Bitcoin, period. Now, we don't even know how many dollars are in circulation. We know that the Federal Reserve has a second balance sheet, but we don't know how much is on it. They've admitted to a second balance sheet, but they won't discuss what's on it. There's manipulation right there on the US dollar. The Federal Reserve is creating more money, and they don't even tell us how much they create. So for use cases for Bitcoin, we know that Bitcoin has a finite number, and there can never be any more because the blockchain actually would let us know. If there were more than 21 million Bitcoin out there, we would know through the blockchain. Is that correct? Four Satoshis?
Yes, it is verifiable from a command on your node. And that was one more thing I forgot to mention. I have been running a node for about 1.5 years now, and that was the first node I started. Today, I'm running 3 fully validating nodes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so, once again, I say again, an honest currency in dishonest times. We have dishonest governments. We have dishonest central banks, and they are running our monetary system. They drive down the value of this currency that we work so hard for, and we pay taxes with, and we pay our bills with. But that wouldn't be the case with Bitcoin at all, would it?
No, it can't. The Bitcoin system cannot be manipulated by anybody who's powerful, or any country, or any king or queen, or any dictator. They can't manipulate Bitcoin. Can they make temporary adjustments or manipulation to the price? Yes, but every day Bitcoin gets bigger and more valuable. That makes it that much harder to manipulate the price. Earlier this year, when Bitcoin was coming down from $20,000, there were points where the Mt. Gox trustee was selling large sums of Bitcoin, and you could see how every time he was selling these large chunks, that the price would just drop right there. And but it was shortly after it would start to rebound, right? So it just kept getting a beating and beating all the way down by these large amounts from this trustee, all the way down to 6,000. So that's just going to get harder and harder to do as time goes on. I mean, but it's a brand new. I mean, as far as money goes, this is brand new territory. This is a brand new asset class. Give it some time to grow and build. And as we just discussed here today, there's lots have happened the past year on Bitcoin. We've got 3 major updates, including SegWit, Lightning, and Liquid. And there's more to come. And it's just getting bigger and better all the time.
So basically, for the use cases of Bitcoin, and I hate to bring this up again, but the ATMs that are popping up everywhere, that tells me that there's got to be some retailers that are actually taking Bitcoin as well, especially with the sheer amount of them. Like, for instance, certain cities in the United States, there'll be 400 or 500 Bitcoin ATMs. So what's your take on that?
Yes, in fact, I have a screen up right now. If Victor can show my screen.
Oh, yeah, he sure can.
To everybody, I have a website called coinatmradar.com, and there you could zoom in on your area, and you could see, like in Southern California, where I'm near, down in the San Diego, LA area, there are 507 Bitcoin ATMs. Up near San Francisco, it's 107. They're all over the place here. As you zoom in, you could get more details of exactly where they are. You can go all the way down to the street level here. And so you could see there's a lot less in other countries, but they're popping up. This is the infrastructure. This is part of the infrastructure that I'm talking about. In fact, there's a regular ATM, a cash ATM here in America that's called Gen Mega, and they are getting software updates as we speak to be able to use at any one of these, like 400,000 of them across America right now. At any one of these, if the owner does the software update, you'd be able to buy with a bank card Bitcoin. It would print out a paper wallet, and then you could just scan the private key on that paper wallet and load those funds right into your wallet on the phone. So that's going to be, I think, a major contributor to the Bitcoin infrastructure.
Yep. And if anyone has any doubts, I mean, does anyone see any Litecoin machines coming up? Or Monero machines coming up. Now, some of those machines will cover multiple cryptocurrencies, but they're generally, by far and large, Bitcoin telling machines. So
yes, in fact,
this is the future happening right in front of you in your own town. I'm sorry, Satoshis, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I just wanted to add something to that. This website does account for that. You can go and, turn off the Bitcoin and say, I just want to look at Litecoin ATMs. And so I don't think any of these ATMs have Litecoin and Litecoin only, right? It's just a Bitcoin ATM that added Litecoin.
Correct.
Most likely, at least for the vast majority of them, right? So, but this one will tell you what they do carry. Of course, me, the first thing I do when I come here, these default to all being on, and I just turn them all off except for Bitcoin, because I really don't care about the others.
Yep.
They're just test nets
exciting
with
times.
They're just test nets with a little value.
Sure. Exciting times. It's definitely a really, really good indicator for the future for Bitcoin. But I'll tell you what, we've ran a little long tonight, so I'd like to ask you if you have any final thoughts. Anything else you'd like to let the audience know about Bitcoin that maybe we didn't cover?
Oh my goodness! I just looked at the clock. We've been at this for almost 2 hours.
Yes, but I'll tell you what, it sure didn't feel like it. It felt like 10 minutes to me.
Yeah. Well, it feels like 10, 15 minutes to me too. Time flies when you're having fun.
Absolutely.
But
Well,
I would like to just say that people could contact me at the Four Satoshis on Twitter, and if they're still viewing my screen share here, you could see my Twitter account here. And also, I've been working with the people that just learned Bitcoin. This is a good website to go to. It's all about Bitcoin and why it's so great, a lot of things that we talked about today. And here you can even schedule a consultation, and you could request first available, or you could request to have your consultations with Four Satoshis, and they will contact me, and we will set up a time to do a consultation for a small fee.
That's wonderful. And I know that you drop in and visit with us from time to time here at Truth, Money, and Freedom on Discord, and which is where we had the interview tonight. So basically, look in the links below. We'll have the Four Satoshis Twitter account linked up. We'll also have an invitation to Discord if you want to come and converse with us right here on the server. And once again, welcome to Truth, Money, and Freedom. And we've just had a wonderful interview with the Four Satoshis. And we're wrapping it up now. But before we actually wrap it up, I'd like to say a special thanks to Dell, my co-host, who helps me out with this program, but also particularly to Victor Vector, who is doing a lot of heavy lifting in the background, doing all the producing and everything technical as far as these interviews are concerned. But thank you once again for joining us tonight, Four Satoshis, and thank you for giving us information for people to be able to contact you. And thank you, the live audience that we had tonight, for joining us, and I hope you all have a wonderful evening.